I think it will. So this was one of the problems you sent me a message about, and I thought the easiest way to reply would be to make a video of it. It looks like you had the right idea for a lot of it, but the process for finding the formula of the inverse and finding the domain and range looked like that was what you were struggling with. So let's start with finding the inverse. So there's two main ways we find the inverse. Come on. Sorry, my tablet's not doing what I think it should. Nope. There we go. So the main way they talk about in the textbook is to switch x and y. So I have y equals 4 over x plus 2. So to find the inverse, I would first switch x and y. X equals 4 over y plus 2. So I'll make sure I'm noting my steps. I switch x and y, and then 2, I solve for y. So this one's really fun to solve for y. The first thing I get to do is get rid of the denominator here. So I'm going to multiply both sides by this y plus 2 here. I do not know why that's rainbow, because I didn't think I'd selected rainbow, but it looks like I did. So I end up with xy plus 2x equals 4. So I distributed the x to both things in here. And on the right, these y plus 2's divide out. So remember, again, I'm solving for y. So I'll subtract the 2x onto both sides. So I get xy equals 4 minus 2x. I'll divide both sides by x. So I end up with y equals 4 minus 2x over x. If you're feeling really cool, you can split the fraction into 4 over x minus 2x over x. I can do that because you can think of it as distributing the division over the 4 and the 2. And then the x's divide out over here, so I end up with 4 over x minus 2. So let's take a look at the domain of f of x. Remember, for domains, a big thing we look for are there any divide by 0 issues, and we have one here. If I have x plus 2 equal to 0, then x equals negative 2 is a problem. Because if I put a negative 2 into the denominator, I get 4 over 0. So my domain is everything but negative 2. And notice this interval notation tells us that it's everything but negative 2 because I go from negative infinity to negative 2. The parenthesis tells me I'm not including the negative 2, and the same here on the right. I use a parenthesis to say I'm not including negative 2 and go to infinity. If I look at my inverse, which is what we found down here, this 4 over x minus 2, we once again look at it and say, hey, what's the issue? Do I have any divide by 0 issues? And we see right here, yep, I have a divide by 0 issue because I just have an x, so I can't have 0. So the domain is negative infinity to 0, union 0 to infinity, where I skip over the 0 in the same way. Well, what's the range for f? I think I saw you'd click the right box at the end. It's just the same thing as the domain of the inverse, because that's what the inverse means. I switch x and y. So the range of the original is the domain of the inverse, and the range of the inverse is the domain of the original. So big thing I want to take you to that, I want you to take from this is an inverse means switch x and y. Everything else is a consequence of that. Hope that helps.